Hi everyone, it's Andrea. I'm a clairaudient medium, and this is my channel called The Fallen Stars. I like to say falling, but actually they're rising. They've risen into spirit, and that's why I can speak with them. I can hear from them. So I'd like to start out this session with, of course, my meditation to secure my channel with a legend. I wasn't even sure if this gentleman was real or fairy tale, but I've chosen Ichabod Crane. So right now I'm securing my channel, putting my keep out signs, posting them along the connection, so no entities with the intention of interrupting will be allowed to do so. So with them all dismissed, I welcome you, Ichabod Crane. Are you there? Yes, Andrea, I am here. I am holy and I am here. My coat sleeves are heavy. I can still feel the damp in the wool of my coat of how cold it was the night I lost my head. Oh, we're not wasting any time. Ichabod Crane, I remember we would have Halloween parties when I was young in the early 70s. My families would have Halloween parties, and there was an album, and they spoke of Ichabod Crane, the headless horseman. There was like a it was like a skit, or it was like just like a scary story. It probably took up an eighth of the record, but I that's all I remember. The headless horseman. I don't know much about your story. I'm looking forward to it if you're willing to tell. Yes, Andrea, thank you for the introduction. The one thing I've never been is a headless horseman. There were horsemen, many of them, riding through the forest under the moonlight the night that I lost my head. They took my head, Andrea. They severed my head. They carried it. They carried it through town, holding it out like a lantern, like a prize, laughing and not paying any mind to the human being and the head of that human being that they had in their hand. It was wasteful. It was ghoulish. Ghoulish is a kind way of saying how horrific it was. The sheep on my land, my livestock, were plenty, 300 head and growing. I did very well for myself. My sheep took good care of me. They were very fruitful and multiplied well. There was hardly any work, it seemed, for me. They just knew to multiply, and they did. After losing my wife 7 years ago, from the time I speak of now, 7 years I mourned my wife, and I let my livestock go. They dwindled down to nearly 40 head. I was up again, and they were up above 300. Very plentiful, very, very healthy, very fruitful in multiplying. I raised my sheep the way a good shepherd would, in the winter nights, out in the cold of day. I sheared them in the summer. as so they would not overheat. I tended to my sheep. I was a good shepherd. They were a good flock. They trusted me as I trusted my sheep. The sheep, they were my lifeline after I lost my wife. If I hadn't had them, I would have probably taken my life. But a good shepherd stays with his sheep. He does not abandon them. So I stayed. There were even days, Andrea, when I thought I saw a little sun come out, when I felt maybe inside a little smile. I just enjoyed being around my sheep. So the sheep were restless one night. It was about 10 o'clock. I could hear them. They're in the barn. They get restless when it's dark and they can't see. So I grabbed my lantern and I walked out to the barn. The barn was a stone's throw away, and a hop, skip, and a jump. Okay, so it is a little ways, but not too far. He says about a quarter trail, whatever that means. So a quarter trail. So I get to the barn and I open the door and I hang the lantern inside the barn near the door. Instantly the sheep calm. As I walk through them, checking on them, making sure everybody's okay, they just calmed. And in a way, it was very calming for me. It just felt really good to be that father figure, bringing security to so many defenseless sheep. I walked through them. I talked to them a little bit. I assessed the barns, the rails, and anything that might need repair. I was very, very much caught unaware when I heard the barn door open, and I looked up, and men were filing in one by one. They had a purpose. I could see it in their eyes. I just wasn't sure what that purpose was yet. I stood very still amongst my sheep. Listening for the first man to talk. I looked right at the first one. He didn't say anything. It was finally the last one. He was the 9th one and the last one. He looked at me, but he didn't say anything either. So I just stood there, knowing that this was not going to turn out good. The 9 of them, I walked through my sheep, harassing them, kicking them, prodding them, yelling. Several were hit over the head. 2 or 3 were killed. These men terrorized my sheep, and while I had to watch, I knew if I made one move, I wasn't going to survive it either. With every cry of every sheep, my heart broke a little bit more. The tugging that I felt, hearing my sheep suffering, being injured, it was more than I could bear, and I couldn't watch. I I just lowered my head and closed my eyes, but it didn't take away the sound of them. Those sounds of those sheep crying still haunt me. It's not a sound that will ever leave the ringing in my ears. Of the 300 sheep that I had in my barn that night, by the time they were done, I might have had 3. They killed all of my sheep, all 300 but 3. And those were the 3 that were nearest me. Everything in my being wanted to protect these last 3 sheep with my life if need be. And my life was soon going to be on the line. The men approached me and they grabbed hold of me and they moved me out of the way of the 3 that were standing behind me, where they proceeded to beat them in the head until they were also dead. They slaughtered 300 of my beautiful sheep in my care. I never felt like less of a man than I did, standing there not doing a thing to help my sheep as they were killed brutally. It must have been 2 hours, the longest 2 hours of my entire lifetime. It felt like it was months and like it was never going to end. I never asked why they were killing my sheep. It was evident on their faces and their mannerisms and what they were doing that they were just cold. They just wanted to kill to kill. They wanted to be bigger and have control over the life of something smaller. I felt the worst shepherd in the world. I didn't protect one sheep. Every one of them around me, as I looked around, were dead. A holocaust. My heart was torn in so many ways upon that moment. I didn't care what they did with me. Nothing was going to hurt as badly as I was already hurting. Tears rolled down my eyes, down my cheeks. I could feel the cold of them on my cheeks, as if they were freezing on their way down. I didn't care that these men saw me cry or not. These tears were for my sheep, and I was going to let them fall. And I let them fall. I cried out in silence, such rage towards God. Not my beautiful sheep. How could all 300 of my beautiful sheep be bludgeoned to death? And it be allowed. He was angry at God. I fell to my knees. They yanked me back up, and they took me outside. They weren't done doing their they're showing off to each other how cruel they can be. Bullies brooding about how tough they are and laughing. Oh, they laughed so much when my sheep cried. They took me out into the hollow. I don't know what the hollow is. He said the hollow's a grove of trees where it's just a canopy and no trunks. So it's like a hollow space area. Yeah? Yes, Andrea, he said yes. They took me out to the hollow. Without my fortitude. Without anything but my coat. Which felt heavier at that moment than it had ever felt. Even when it was wet, it wasn't as heavy as it felt that night they were walking me to the hollow. When we got into the hollow, they let me go. They let go of me. They backed up. They handed me a lantern and told me I had a 10. Had a what? A 10-second head start before they hunted me. I took the lantern, not that I wanted it. And I took that 10 seconds head start and I ran. I hadn't gotten very far when I ditched the lantern. I dropped the lantern. Because the lantern was going to help them find me. I swore I was going to survive so I could get vengeance upon every single one of those men. They weren't going to get away with what they did to my sheep. I continued to run and run and run. The clouds parted and the moon came out. I could see clearings, I could see pathways, I could see maybe an opportunity of somewhere good to hide. That is what failed me. The moonlight did not help me. It was my curse. For as light as it was for me, it was for them. I hid in a patch of thistle bush, berry thistle. It's a thistle patch. And I remember my coat snagging on them, making it even harder for me to burrow in deep enough to where I wouldn't be seen. I ended up leaving my jacket, that heavy old coat, leaving it there as a flag, as a marker for them that they were close. I didn't have time to take it off the thistles, as I had to leave it. From the jacket, I went to the left, and I went straight to the left, as fast as I could. But I had run myself into an even larger thistle. I'm gonna say gourd, but bush. It was huge, and before I knew it, I wasn't getting out of there. There was no path, and I figured hopefully I'm deep enough because I can't go anywhere else, especially without my coat. I was torn to pieces with the thistles as it was. My face, I didn't see my face, but it was wet, cold, like blood freezing on my face from the scratches that I had suffered. And I just hoped that they didn't smell my blood. I begged for it to freeze as soon as it bled out, as soon as it came out. was scared, beyond scared. No ice was going to cool that off. No sunshine would make this go away, would make this rain go away. I could hear them in the distance. It sounded like they had surrounded me in this big entrapment of thistle. It's a fate that I left. For maybe I would have survived to find that, to reach that vengeance for my sheep. That wasn't to happen. They closed in on me. The dogs found me. They barked and tore at my wrists, my arms, my flesh. That hurt. It felt like the tearing of my flesh and tendons, and it was never going to stop. It could have been only minutes, but it felt like hours. I just wanted them to get to me and end it for me. The pain was excruciating in my arms. She's talking about right here, the tendons and with the cold, and he still had tears for his sheep running down his face. Finally, the men reached me. Having hacked away at that thistle, I could see actually a path that may not tear at me if I was to walk through it. That was not to happen. They called their dogs off, or pulled their dogs off of me. And as I was on my knees weeping, holding my arms to my chest, crying for my sheep. I knew. I put my head down when I leaned down that I would be dead. And it couldn't come fast enough, and I closed my eyes. And that, in one hack, my head was off. Andrea, it doesn't sound like a very happy tale. And it wasn't. This was the crime of all crimes against man and nature, against me and my sheep, who longed only to multiply and find peace from one another, from each other. We harmed no one. If anything, we fed many. It will always strike in my heart as if it was cold steel. The brutality from within a human being is not only startling but shameful. The sin of man, uncomparable to anything living on the planet. Even the mountain lion has respect for its own species. They don't slaughter each other like they slaughter sheep. When the wind blows through the windows or where the windows were in my barn, there's a whistling sound. It's a hollow, empty whistling where once the calling of my sheep was. The sounds of my sheep were echoing through that whistling, and it still carries its way to my ears. I will forever hear in the whistling wind the sound of my sheep calling for me. Ichabod, what would your advice be for humanity today? Looking down on us now in this day and age. He says, Andrew, my advice would be shepherd your own sheep. Shear your own sheep. Guard your own sheep well. The schools are shearing your sheep. While you're not there to guard them, they are shearing your sheep. The shearing of your sheep is your job, your place, your right. Let no other shear your sheep. In future generations, depends on the well-being of the sheep. Depends on the fit and well-being of today's sheep, of your sheep. Future generations will only be as well as the sheep that rear them. You have a responsibility for your flock to shear them and guard them, protect them, as if they were the most precious asset that tomorrow has, because they are. I hollowed within that hollow that night, being gutted by the sounds of my dying sheep. Belittled I was, I did nothing, could do nothing. I was helpless to watch. There is not a pain or torment known to man that could extend or be more than what happened, what he felt. A horror is too good of a word to describe my tale of horror, terror, tearing me from the inside. My heart was in a million pieces, and I could feel every single one of them loudly, individually, each piece of my heart hurt beyond what I thought anything could. Death came soon enough. What a relief that was. No more pain. I carry the cries of my sheep with me still, for their shepherd will not forgive himself. I bear them, I bear their cries for eternity by choice, as I was their shepherd, and I will remain there. That was heavy. Thank you, Ichabod. Sorry about what happened. He said, Andrea, no one can fathom what is about to happen. In your wildest thoughts, the unimaginable can happen. Tend to your sheep, guard your sheep, as if their lives are threatened daily. They are precious, and it's up to you as their shepherd to look out for them. That's my advice to the whole world. Let no sheep of yours stray too far, for that they don't get trapped in the thistle of this world. I calm Andrea at knowing my story will be heard. Thank you. I feel the arrow through your heart. It wasn't aimed that way. This should and will hit like arrow to many hearts watching this, as it should. It means there's still humanity in the human. We can learn a lot by watching our sheep. Watch yours. Ichabod, before you go, who would you like to see me bring message from next time? Ron. Still. Don. Donald. Sutherland. His wife's younger. His wife's younger brother. Donald Sutherland's wife's younger brother. That's right. Huh. Okay. I'll have to look into that. Thank you, Ichabod. Andrea, I remain in spirit, choosing not to go back into incarnate into a body, into a human being. I found it distasteful and painful, and I really don't want to be a part of anything that can do that kind of injustice upon another innocent. There are still monsters out there, Andrea. Guard your sheep. Listen. Listen to them. They'll let you know what's coming. Thank you, Icabod. That was incredible. say. Andrea, keep shining your lantern. It lights your path. The path of stones. Is bright. Keep walking ahead, follow the light, go towards the light. For when you stop at the end of that path, turn around and realize the amount of people that follow. Don't ditch your light. Don't ditch your lantern, Andrea. You're not going where I was. Very kind. Thank you. Okay, 36 minutes. I'm trying to get better at this 30-minute thing. It's really hard to when you get stories like that. Icabod, I so appreciate you. I know that there was more detail and a lot more to your story that you could have shared. And I'm also aware that you knew it. We had 30 minutes. So that'll be it. And then Donald Sutherland's wife's brother. Well, I'll have to look into that. Anyways, stay tuned, guys. I'm going to try to do more and more and more of these. You can leave a comment. Tell me who you want to hear from. I'd be happy to oblige.